The time has come to react to your Christopher Nolan movie hot takes. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. So today I am reacting to your Christopher Nolan movie hot takes. I put up a post a few days ago on my community tab and I had over 100 submissions for hot takes, so I sifted through those and I found some good ones to talk about here in this video. But before I get into this, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your Christopher Nolan movie hot takes as well as your reaction to some of these hot takes. Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel, and check out my Patreon link down below. Any support goes a long way. Extra videos, early access to videos, Discord server, all that good stuff is linked down below. But let's go ahead and dive right into these nuclear hot takes. See what I did there? It's cringe, sorry.
Cut the shit!
Starting with the Patreon hot takes. I put up a post on my Patreon, which you guys again should check out, link down below. The first one's from Ethan. He says, Batman Begins is better than The Dark Knight. I disagree. Batman Begins is a very solid origin, but my hot take, and we may get into this later, I think Batman Begins is the weakest of the trilogy. Some people say it's the second best, some people even say it's the best. It's the weakest of the trilogy to me. Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises have stronger villains, more memorable moments, better scores even. I just think Batman Begins is a great origin. It's got the Nolan flair for sure, but I've always found the movie actually to be a little bit overrated, so I gotta disagree with you here, Ethan. The next Patreon hot take is from Aiden. He says, I don't know if it's a hot take, but Inception is the best Nolan film IMO. My favorite is The Dark Knight, though. I agree. If you guys should check out my ranking, I've said this forever. Nolan's top movie for me is Inception, and honestly, it'll probably always be that way. Love The Dark Knight, but I think Inception's probably his best movie, as well as my favorite. So there you have it. I agree with you there, Aiden, and I think a lot of people do as well. Joseph with another Patreon hot take saying, Nolan's movie Tenet was one of the best movies of 2020 and the COVID era in general. I think it's the best movie of that whole COVID era, and it's definitely the best movie of 2020. The only competition for me would be Onward, which I'm a big defender of. You guys know I love that one. That came out right before the pandemic, but Tenet was like August, September, I think, of the pandemic, and the first movie that got my ass back in theaters. So shout out Tenet. I agree with you there. It's one of the best movies of 2020, actually the best movie of 2020. And I don't even know if that's a hot take because that wasn't a really competitive year in my mind. But the last Patreon hot take is from Dominic. Shout out Dominic, actually hooked me up with this Top Gun Maverick poster that you guys always see in the background. But Dominic says, Interstellar is Nolan's best work, hands down, and The Dark Knight Rises is almost better than The Dark Knight. So regarding the first part of that, I disagree. I don't think it's his best work, hands down. It is top 5 Nolan, top 5, top 6. He's just made an abundance of fantastic movies. So I think it then just comes down to personal preference. I think he's made a few movies that are better than Interstellar, and a little more rewatchable too, which is huge for me. But it's still fantastic. The Interstellar score, in contention for the best score, hands down. And then the back half of this, Dark Knight Rises is almost better than Dark Knight. I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of agree. I still have The Dark Knight over it by a few placements on my Nolan ranking, but seriously, The Dark Knight Rises is dismissed so much, and we're going to talk about the Dark Knight trilogy a lot more in this video, but that movie's dismissed, and it blows my freaking mind. I don't understand how people can get so mad about The Dark Knight Rises. Why? Bane is I'm not going to say he's on par, but he's damn near on par with Heath Ledger's Joker as a menacing villain who is outsmarting Batman, physically and mentally destroying him at times, and sends him to hell, pretty much. Dark Knight Rises is amazing. It's a story of overcoming adversity, rising from the ashes to greatness. It is an inspiring movie, and people don't give it enough credit. So that does it for all the Patreon hot takes. Again, shout out to all my patrons. Check out the Patreon link down below. Any support goes a long way. I'd love to have you guys over in that community. All right, now we're getting into the hot takes submitted from the community tab from a few days ago. The first one from Frozen Thing Studios. Nolan is a better director than Spielberg, and it's not even close. I am hesitant to say that because they've both made fantastic movies, but Spielberg has shown a little bit more variety in his filmography over the years. He's got a longer career as a director. He's made films like Jaws, which was groundbreaking. Jurassic Park was groundbreaking. Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, but then you've got Raiders of the Lost Ark, films like Catch Me If You Can. He's even ventured out into the musical with West Side Story. He has been nominated for, I think, Oscar for Best Director in 4 consecutive decades, I believe. The 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. 5 consecutive decades, I believe. 6 maybe, actually. My God. He's been around for years. He is a master at his craft, and frankly, I think Spielberg is a bit of a better director than Nolan. It's hard to compare the two because they make vastly different movies. But if I look at Nolan's filmography, I go, okay, he's got his style and flair through every single one, and you know you're going to get some crazy twists and reveals, and events are sort of going to be told out of order. It has that Nolan feel. With Spielberg, it has that magical charm that's indescribable, but he does that in various films. And then he goes and he tackles heavy subject material like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. He's made the best war film of all time, the best adventure film of all time in Raiders. And then he's made the definitive shark movie. He made Jurassic Park, which changed movies forever. I mean, I think Spielberg, it's so tough to compare the two because they make vastly different movies. But I think I still give the edge to Spielberg, even though Nolan is incredible. They're both all-timers, and there's no denying it. Which do you prefer in the comments down below? Who's better, Nolan or Spielberg? I need to hear it in the comments down below. Moving on, we've got a very hot take. Inception is his worst movie. I find it incredibly boring, and I don't care for the characters at all. I don't know what's happening, and I don't know what's the point. But the thing is, I don't care what's happening either. So I disagree in every sense of the word. I think Inception is his best movie, probably. I find it incredibly riveting, and in terms of the characters, how can I not care about them? The main character, Cobb, we learn so much about his backstory. It's traumatizing to him, and he just wants to get back to be with his kids by the end of the film. He in particular is a standout character, but there's a lot of fascinating characters in the film. We'll touch on this later, but I don't think the movie is really that confusing. I will talk about this later. I'm kind of saving my points for that, but compared to some of Nolan's other movies, it's actually kind of straightforward to me. So I disagree. It's far from his worst movie there. This one's from Joe. Joe says, Tenet is Christopher Nolan's most underrated movie. I would argue you're correct here because so many people dismiss this as like, oh, it makes no sense and it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. I actually think it's middle to top tier Nolan. I really do. So this and Dunkirk are the two that I think are pretty underrated by a lot of people. So I would agree with you there. This next one's from Wyatt saying, The Prestige is not only Nolan's best, but in my opinion, the greatest film of all time. Wow. I mean, greatest film of all time is one of the highest praises you can give a movie. So I don't know if I can go that far with The Prestige, but I will say it's a top 3 Nolan movie, and I think that it is another one of those films that falls a little lower on people's rankings. It's a mind-blowing film, really, and if you haven't seen it, you gotta watch it. I won't spoil anything, but your mind will be blown. When it comes down to it, I do think it's a great movie. Greatest film of all time? No, I can't say that. But what is the greatest film of all time? You know, that's the question that we all kind of never really have an answer to, so who's to say? The next one says, Insomnia is a great thriller and one of the most underrated movies of all time. I included this because Insomnia didn't really have a lot of hype in the comments. Insomnia is lower on my Nolan ranking, I won't lie, it's pretty low. The reason being, he didn't write the movie, and that shines through to me. But it's still a very engaging thriller with some amazing performances from Pacino and Robin Williams. They kept me invested enough, and it's not a movie I go back to and revisit all that much, but I would say it's underappreciated maybe. But then I look at the rest of Nolan's films, and I'm like, actually, this one doesn't really hold a candle to the rest of them. So I don't think it's in the spotlight as much or talked about as much just because it's an early Nolan film, and it's not insane what happens. You know, it's fairly straightforward compared to a lot of his other films. It's lacking that Nolan script and that style a little bit more so. But I still enjoy it. I do think it's a solid little thriller. I wouldn't call it great. I think it's a solid thriller. Moving on, Dunkirk is one of Nolan's best films. Dunkirk is a very, very good movie. One of the better war films we've seen in a long time. And for a while, it was like top 5 for me. It's fallen back a little bit. I wouldn't say it's one of his best movies, but I would say it's a damn good movie. He's only made 12 movies, so it's like in that 7, 8, 9 range for me. I think it's a great movie, but to say it's one of his best, I can't do that right now. But it is a very, very good movie, and he's never made a bad movie. That's crazy to say, but it's true. Rylan, shout out Rylan, says, The Dark Knight Rises is an absolute masterpiece, completely overhated and an utterly legendary conclusion to Bale's Batman. It's top 4 Nolan for me and top 5 comic book films of all time. I will agree that it is overhated and it is a legendary conclusion. I still take issue with a few little things, which I don't want to get into here. Notably, sort of the handling of Miranda Tate as a character in the third act. I didn't love certain aspects of it, but I still really, really like this movie. It's my second favorite Dark Knight trilogy film, and in terms of top 5 comic films of all time, I don't know if I can go that far. I think The Dark Knight is definitely top 5. I think Dark Knight Rises could be top 10 though. Top 10, top 15 for sure, but top 5, I can't go that far. I will agree with you though, completely overhated, and please, if you don't like The Dark Knight Rises, I really want to hear why in the comments down below. Genuinely, Voice your complaints with that film, please. I would love to hear them. I should have started the video with this next hot take. Nolan doesn't have a single bad film. You're 100% correct. He does not have a single bad movie. I agree wholeheartedly. He's made movies that are better than others, but his worst movie to me is his first film, Following, and that's still a positive score for me. He's never made a bad movie, and I don't think he ever will. He's incapable of making a bad movie. He's just that great at what he does. The next one says, hot take. I think Oppenheimer will be his best film. I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. It is perhaps his best film. But then it comes down to my favorite, and that's how I did my Nolan ranking. There's 3 movies I wasn't comfortable putting Oppenheimer above at the time. I think Oppenheimer is arguably his best directed film, arguably his best crafted movie in general. It's tough. I think over time this could definitely make the push to that #1 spot on my ranking. It was crazy to me thinking before Oppenheimer came out, Oppenheimer being Christopher Nolan's best movie, that's impossible. I was like, no way, it's getting all this praise, there's no way. It might actually be. It might just be. Check it out for yourself if you haven't seen it, and I have my Oppenheimer review up above. This next one's from Zach, saying, Memento isn't as good as people make it out to be, but I can't agree that Nolan is the GOAT. Nolan's one of the GOATs for sure, and I really like Memento, but I think I'll agree with you here. I think I will, and this is a hot take. I know, there's a lot of big Memento fans out there. I've always found the movie to be a little overhyped. It's definitely early Nolan, and it's sort of this upgraded version of Following in a way. A lot of ideas from Following are fully brought to light in Memento with a bigger budget. Memento's not a movie I go back to all that much, and yeah, the concept's really cool, sort of this back-to-front storytelling with these timelines. It adds up and can get a little confusing. Compared to a lot of these other Nolan movies, I just think it falls a little bit short. Not when I revisit, hardly ever actually, so I think people overrate it in terms of his overall filmography, in my opinion at least. It's still a good movie though. Jason says, Nolan is the best comic book director and it's not even close. I would say I can't fully agree with this because yes, he made the Dark Knight trilogy, which was full-on Nolan distinct style, but then you've got guys like James Gunn who make films for Marvel and DC, and he's proven that he's got the ability to take pretty much any character from any comic book and make them so lovable and allow the audience to have this deep connection to them that I think James Gunn is in contention. Then you've got the Snyder cultists who think Zack Snyder he's far from the best, by the way. I just had to take that shot. Nolan's name's in that conversation as well, so it's interesting. You pose a good question here. I don't know. He's in contention. I'll say that much. If he comes out of retirement from comic book films and makes another that's not Batman and it blows our socks off, then I'd be willing to say yes, but the fact that he's only made Batman films, I can't go that far. We've got the Guardians trilogy with James Gunn, and then the Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker show. So I think Gunn might have the edge right now, and I could be forgetting. Sam Raimi has proven he can do, the Raimi trilogy, and Multiverse of Madness was fine, but it still had a style. If Nolan ever comes out and does sort of his own take on, some DC hero, say, in James Gunn's new universe, then maybe, but he's top 3, I think, even with just the Dark Knight trilogy. The next one says, no matter how good Beyond the Spider-Verse is, the best comic book trilogy will always be the Dark Knight. That's a fair point, but also, you never know. If Beyond the Spider-Verse comes in and is just as good, if not better, than Into or Across, there's a very serious debate to be had there. A very serious debate to be had there, and I think that will be the debate. Whenever Beyond comes out, it'll be Dark Knight versus Spider-Verse trilogy. Which one's better? And honestly, I don't have the answer to that because I haven't seen Beyond. But if Beyond blows us away, which I think it probably will, there's a very serious conversation to be had there. The debates will be raging online, let's just say that much. The next one says, I like Dark Knight Rises more than Batman Begins. 100% agree. That's all I have to say about that. Skylar says, I've never been a fan of The Prestige. The twists and reveals at the end just never worked for me. That's the only one of his films I have a negative opinion on. Wow. I completely disagree with this. The reveals in this film had my jaw on the floor the first time I saw it. It is, again, this 3-act structure sort of resembling a magic trick, and it's just brilliance in my opinion. The performances have me engaged, the plot twists, if you will. I love it. It's very high on my Nolan ranking, so I disagree strongly here, but I know that there's people, The Prestige, it's not like a lot of people either have it really low or really high. I've never really seen it in the middle. Like, a lot of people are like, oh no, one of the worst or one of the best. So let me know what you think of The Prestige in the comments down below. This next one's not a hot take, it's just a point that I wanted to address. Every one of his movies is just one word except for the one starring Christian Bale. Coincidence? I think not. This is valid. The Dark Knight trilogy all has multiple words, and The Prestige is 2 words. Every other Nolan film has 1 word in the title, and they don't star Christian Bale. Does that mean something? It might. Who knows? This next hot take says, the plot of Inception is not confusing at all, and people who think it is either only watch the movie once or are too dumb. I will address this a little kinder than that. I don't think people are too dumb. I also think people who've seen the movie multiple times could still be confused by it, but I will say I agree that that it's really not that confusing. People are like, oh, I've seen Inception and it makes no sense at all. I don't know how this is possible unless someone's not following the movie, because they set it up so well. Literally an hour of this movie is devoted to them crafting sort of everyone's role in this dream heist. I'm gonna lay this out. They go to sleep on this plane. In the dream, they go to sleep within the dream, and they keep sleeping within dreams. And then they ride the kick back to reality. Obviously, Leo's character ends up in limbo, but it's like the same thing applies. There's a way to get out of that. So I was never too confused by this movie. They lay it out with the kick and all of those things. It's set up even in the beginning of the movie. So I was really never confused. A movie that genuinely can be confusing is Tenet. I've always found Inception like not cut and dry, but kind of, you know? It's like the whole movie is building to this dream heist. They set up the rules of the world, the whole entire movie, and then they go to sleep. They plant this idea, you know, in Cillian Murphy's head, the Inception essentially, and then they ride the kick out of it. And I never was like, oh, I just can't, I don't get it. Like, and again, I'm not, if you don't, that's totally fine. I'm not trying to be that guy that's like, oh, you just didn't understand the movie. I was just saying, for me personally, I never really found the movie that confusing. Maybe the first time I watched it, I was like mind blown, but after that, I was like, no, I'm good, I get it. So I enjoy Inception quite a bit, and I do agree it's not terribly confusing, in my opinion at least. This next one is from fellow YouTuber Zach Pope. Shout out to Zach. He says, The Dark Knight is not in Nolan's top 3 best films. He's coming with the heat. I don't know how it can't be in the top 3 best Nolan films. It's so revolutionary, and it's one of the best comic films ever made. But if it's outside of a top 5, that's when I would take even more offense to it. I can see top 3, you know, you throw, say, Inception, Interstellar, The Prestige, throw an Oppenheimer in there over, you know, as 3-4 movies that could possibly be over it. So I wonder what's over it. Interstellar, Inception, The Prestige, maybe? I'd be interested to discuss that, so let me know, Zach. Adam says he has fell off a little bit since The Dark Knight Rises. His film started to show more of his faults. I disagree strongly. After The Dark Knight Rises, we got Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, and now Oppenheimer. I think maybe, if anything, he strengthened his filmography more with the 4 films post The Dark Knight Rises. Brevin says Tenet is his best movie. I disagree, but I love to see the love for Tenet. I think it's a great, great movie that Robert Pattinson and Nolan, we need more of that. More, please. Love it. Interstellar is way overhyped. Strongly disagree. I mean, the score alone has that movie damn near a 5 out of 5. But then you get down to it, and like I mentioned, McConaughey's performance, brilliant. All around, this is a damn good movie. This deals with sort of love and time and growing up. All these different ideas sort of pushed into one film, and it's a beautiful movie in my opinion. So I think it's very good and not overhyped. The next one says Barbie is better than Oppenheimer. By the way, this was posted before anyone had seen either movie. And now that I've seen both, Oppenheimer's the better movie. There you go. And I'll probably make a short addressing that, like Barbie versus Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's better than Barbie. Sean says Tenet is not only Nolan's worst film, but it is a bad film overall. Wow. I think it's far from his worst film, and I think that it's definitely not a bad movie. It's damn good. I mean, I don't know how you could watch that and be like, that's a bad movie. Like, it was just so riveting. And on top of that, I care about the characters. A lot of people say they don't, but I do. And the concept alone, mind-blowing stuff. I really like Tenet, and I will defend that movie pretty much forever. This next one is Nuclear. I'm not a fan of Heath Ledger's Joker. Most overrated Joker. Jack Nicholson for the win. That's so disrespectful in my opinion. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but to say that Nicholson for the win over Heath Ledger... Get out of here. What are we doing? Heath Ledger's the definitive Joker. I've argued before Joaquin could arguably be the better performance and a better Joker, but they're vastly different, you know? That's like less of a comic book film. This is like Joker in The Dark Knight is one of, if not the best movie villain we've ever seen. Heath Ledger's performance is iconic and terrifying. Jack Nicholson came off as literally a clown in the movie. I'm not saying it was bad. He was just dancing around like the stupid little clown. I'm not scared of that Joker. Heath Ledger, nightmare fuel. That's all I'm saying. This one's from my buddy Trevor at Film Geeks. Everyone go subscribe if you haven't already. He says, Dunkirk is bottom tier Nolan. Look, I really like Dunkirk. I always have since I saw it in theaters. And I disagree. I don't think it's bottom tier Nolan. I guess it's more middle of the road Nolan for me, but that's not saying much at all because all of his movies are really, really good. But bottom tier, I disagree. I think that it's at least right in the middle or a little below the middle of his filmography. I'm interested to see what you think on rewatch with that one. And the last one of the hottest takes on this list, saving it for last. The Dark Knight is overrated. It's a very boring movie, and the only positives are the Joker. There was a period of time in my life where I was like, maybe The Dark Knight's overrated. I think I hinted at this earlier. I was totally wrong. It deserves all the praise and more. It is a special movie that changed the game for superhero films and the way that we look at them and respect them. Heath Ledger's Joker is the standout for sure, but you've got Hans Zimmer's score. Aaron Eckhart is slept on in terms of his performance as Two-Face, Bale's Batman, the interrogation scene, but then what would follow, like the trickeration there, I mean, this is a smart movie, and it flies by. The opening heist scene, the action, of course, is awesome. It's like between this and The Batman for best Batman movie ever made. So to say that it's overrated, I disagree. It's not very boring at all. It's very intense from start to finish, and I don't know how a movie with a performance the caliber of Heath Ledger's Joker could be considered boring remotely, so I disagree in every sense of the word, and I think a lot of people do as well. Let me know if you think The Dark Knight's overrated down below. But that's going to do it for me reacting to all of your Christopher Nolan movie hot takes. Let me know all your Nolan hot takes down below and your reaction to some of the ones that I read in this video. What are your thoughts on Oppenheimer? Check out my review and my Nolan ranking. Both those are linked above and down below. But thank you all so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe to that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.